Hey, what's up? Welcome to this PHP Laravel 8 tutorial videos. In this video, I'm gonna explain how to install Laravel 8, and then I'm gonna explain a little bit about routing, and then controller, views, and then how to handle requests. And keep in mind that this is not an in-depth explanation, but just enough to get you started with Laravel. So check it out. Alright, I already prepared a folder called Laravel. We will need PHP here, so I recommend you to install XAMPP in your computer. It doesn't have to be XAMPP, but it has MySQL bundled in it, so I'll go with that. And then we need to make sure that we can run PHP from the command line, so let's try php-v, and if you get something like this, it means that PHP is already up and running. But if you don't, you can open the system environment variables and then click on the environment variables here and look for a variable called path. In there should be a path pointing to a PHP installation in your computer, like this. But if not, you can add it yourself by adding the path leading to the PHP installation in your computer. And next thing you need is Composer. You can go to the getcomposer.org/download, and then under command line installation, you can find this 4-line of command, which you can copy and then paste to your command prompt, and then wait for the installation to finish. If everything goes well, you should see no problem at all. And the last line here is likely not to get executed, so you can just press enter. And you can check if the composer is set up properly by using composer-v. If you see something like this, that means that the installation is a success. But if case it's not, that means that something is wrong during the installation. And except for the network problem, there are two common things that could make the setup fail, which could be a wrong PHP version or if there are missing library dependency. In my case, I am using PHP version 7.3, which is not exactly the latest version, but it's the version I have. And in case of the missing dependency, you can see in the error message what libraries are needed to be installed. And actually, you can Google the error message and you'll know how to install those. Alright, next let's move to the Laravel directory. So I can just copy this and then cd paste, and oh, I forget to change the drive, so let's d:. Alright, we're there. Next, we need to install the Laravel itself, so you can go to the Laravel website, which is in laravel.com/docs, and then go to this installation via Composer, and here is the command line you can use to create Laravel project. But I'm not gonna copy paste it because it probably get automatically executed, so I'm just gonna type it in. Composer, create dash project, and Laravel/Laravel, and this is the name of our application, so I'm gonna name it my app. Okay, and this is where we wait. And here is what it looks when it's done. You can see here that there is a my app folder inside the Laravel and many other things inside, which is created by Composer. And let's open this folder as a project in our Visual Studio Code. Inside this .env file, there is a configuration for our application, such as the database connection, the hostname, port, database username and password. Here you can also set the name of the application, the environment, and the debug mode. Now let's try to start our application. I'm not gonna use terminal from Windows because in Visual Studio Code there is already a terminal which you can open using Ctrl plus tilde. And in this case I don't need this command prompt anymore. And in order to run Laravel project, you can type PHP artisan serve and then enter. And now our application is already running in this address. And if we copy this address and open it in browser, we will get something like this. It means that our Laravel application is already up and running. Alright, now let me explain how it works. There is a lot of things inside the project which belong to the Laravel framework, but right now there is only a few you need to pay attention to. Inside this app folders there is an HTTP, and inside it is controllers. This is where we put our controllers, and next is models, which we will put our models. And the next thing is root. Inside it there is web.php, which contains all root accessible from browser. And then the next thing is resource, then views, which contains our views. Alright, the first thing we need to see is this web.php inside these roots, and inside this is where you can register web roots for your application. For example, this is a root handling the /path, which represent our home, and if everyone access this path, we will return a view called welcome. And inside the views directory there is this file called welcome.play.php, which will be rendered when anyone access this root. Now let's make a new file inside this views, and let's name it test.play.php, and inside it let's put some text like this is my first page, and then save it. And inside this web.php let's change welcome into test. And now let's go back to the browser and refresh this page, and here we go, we get the view we've just created. And now let's try to make a new root. I'm just gonna copy this and change the path into welcome and the view into welcome, and then save it. And in the browser let's try to access /welcome, and we'll get our welcome screen back. And this is basically how routing works in Laravel. Every path that would be accessed should be defined in this root, or otherwise you will get a 404 page, which means page not found error. Now let's discuss about controller. Now instead of immediately returning a view like this, we will use a controller, so let's delete this. And then in order to call a controller we need to specify the class, so let's make our new controller. Controller should be put inside this folder, and we can create a new file or copy existing file, and we can also use artisan tool to create our new controller. And let's just do that, but in this terminal we already have a serve command running, so we need another one. And good thing in Visual Studio we can run multiple terminal just by clicking this plus button, and we get a new terminal up and running. And you can easily switch between terminal by using this tab on the right. Artisan can help us to easily create some files. If you type PHP artisan make colon and then enter, you can see that there are some files that can be created using artisan command like controller and model. And now let's make our controller. For the name, I will use home controller. The name of the controller should be in camel case followed by controller. This is Laravel naming convention, which you may or may not follow. That's up to you. Alright, press enter, and there it is, a home controller created inside the controller folder. And now inside this controllers, let's make a new function and call it index. And by the way, in Visual Studio Code, you can use code snippet to ease your code, such as this. By typing fun and then enter, a new empty function will be created. Now let's rename it to index, and we don't need parameters, so let's just remove it. And inside this function is where we put our logics for our application. But now let's just return a few. Let's go back to our root. We're gonna use a controller class, so we need to specify where we put our controller. Use app \http \controllers and home controllers. If you look into the documentation of routing, you can see that class can be called in this manner. So let's make a new array and then home controller and double colon class and followed by string, which is the name of the function we're gonna call, in this case index. Now let's go back to the browser and let's go to the home path. And if you see this, it means that our routing is working. Oh, and by the way, if you have IntelliFence extension in your Visual Studio, you don't have to do all of those. So instead of typing this manually, you can type home, and then inside this suggestion you can see that Visual Studio already recognized this class. So if you press enter, you can see here at the top that the namespace of our class is included automatically. Alright, this is what happened. When somebody accessed this path through the web, we called this home controller, and inside this home controller we called index function. And inside this function we're returning a view, which is this test view. In fact, you don't have to return a view at all. You can just return a string. Next, let's try to pass some data to the view. So let's just undo the change. And to do that, there is a second parameter to this view function, which we can use to pass the data from the controller into the view. So let's just try to make some data, which is in array form, and let's call it name, which is gonna be my name. And inside the view, let's just change it to hi, my name is, and here we can use PHP echo like this. And then in the browser you can see that the data we define in the controller can be accessed in the view. And if you look at the name of our view files, you can see that there is a plate before the PHP. This means that we are using the plate template. and we can do something like this, and this is called handlebars, which is equal to calling a single echo like we did before. And if you want to learn more about the plate template, you can always head to the documentation in the Laravel website, and you can see that there is a lot of things you can do with the plate template. Now let's back to our view. You can see here that we are using the get root. And what does it mean? Now let's head to the routing documentation in the Laravel website, and you can see that there is other router methods other than get. There is a post, put, patch, delete, and option. Each serves a different purpose. Like in this case, we are using get root, and we usually use post to send a form data, and these four other root are usually used to build a REST API, and we don't need those right now, so let's just focus on these two. Alright, in order to use another method, you can just specify the method name. And if there is two methods with the same path like this, it means that if the request is get, like you're accessing through the browser, then the first root will be executed. But if it is post, like if you're sending from data, then the second method will be called instead. And typically in this case, you will need two different methods inside the controller to handle either get or post. But right now we don't need post, so let's remove it. Alright, next thing I'm gonna show you how to retrieve get parameter. And if you don't know what get parameter is, it is basically data which you can pass through the browser into the server like this. And this basically means there is a channel parameter with the value of gamma code. And in native PHP, people usually use underscore get magic variable to retrieve data from the get request. But since we are using Laravel, instead of doing this manually, we can use a request class which provided by the Laravel instead. And in order to use a request class, you will need to pass the request class through the parameter of your function and assign it a variable name like request. And you can use this request variable inside your function to catch anything sent from your browser, either through get or post parameter. And now let's try to pass the data into the view, and let's name it channel. And now instead of using get like this, we are using the request object, and then followed by get method, and then the name of the get request. And now we should be able to call channel as a variable in the view, so let's try to open our views. Inside here I will display the variable, so let's add a new line and then some text and then the variable channel, and then open the browser, refresh, and voila. Now let's try to change the query parameter like this, and now we have successfully passed something from the browser into the view. In request object, instead of using this get method, we can also call the parameter as a property like this, and this way we can simplify our code. And now let's refactor our code a little bit. Let's put this array into a variable, because the more data we need to send into the view, the longer this line will become. So let's make a new variable here and then paste the array and a little bit of restructuring. And finally, don't forget to add the variable into the view. And this concludes this part of the video, and I hope you find it helpful, and see you next time.